When they came for his father, they forgot to silence the witness. In the quiet corners of a gentrifying neighborhood, David Johnson's pharmacy stood as the last barrier against corporate development. His murder, disguised as police justice, was meant to be the final piece in a perfect conspiracy, until his son Elijah took the stand. What happens when a 10-year-old boy with flawless recall becomes the one thing corrupt men can't control? When the child they overlooked becomes the witness they can't discredit? A neighborhood watches, a mother fights, a system trembles, and a small voice speaking unshakable truths becomes the most dangerous sound in a courtroom built on comfortable lies. Some children inherit wealth, others inherit purpose. Elijah Johnson inherited his father's memory, and with it, the power to bring down an empire. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The courthouse bustled with activity as the Johnson family made their way through the crowd. 10-year-old Elijah sat in the back seat of their aging sedan, watching his mother Maya apply lipstick with trembling hands. He noticed how her normally steady fingers quivered slightly, leaving a small smudge at the corner of her mouth. "Remember what we practiced," Maya said, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Just tell the truth." Her voice cracked on the last word. Outside, protesters waved signs reading "Justice for David," while counter-protesters held "Back the Blue" banners. News vans lined the courthouse steps, reporters rehearsing their stand-ups with the imposing building as their backdrop. As they exited the car, uniformed officers stationed outside gave them cold stares. One touched his badge, a silent gesture of solidarity with Officer Reeves. Elijah noticed his mother's typically immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, a button misaligned on her blouse, a scuff on her right shoe. Small details that spoke volumes about their morning rush and her distracted state of mind. Inside, the courtroom divided visibly. The right side filled with officers in uniform and plainclothes, the left with community members wearing "Justice for David" buttons. Elijah cataloged specific details, counting 27 officers present, 14 in uniform, the rest in suits with visible badge bulges. The middle rows remained sparse, as if people feared appearing neutral. "Stay close," Maya whispered, guiding him down the aisle. Elijah's grandmother sat directly behind them, occasionally whispering prayers that sounded like gentle rain against a window. A sketch artist captured Elijah's face with swift pencil strokes, making him suddenly self-conscious. Across the room, Officer Michael Reeves adjusted his tie with manicured hands. His defense attorney patted his shoulder reassuringly, leaning in to whisper something that made Reeves nod confidently. Reeves made eye contact with Elijah, giving a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. When the prosecutor looked their way, Reeves's demeanor instantly shifted to somber respect. Elijah noticed how Reeves's fingers tapped rhythmically when the prosecutor spoke, but went still when his own attorney talked. His posture was relaxed, legs spread wide, taking up space with the confidence of someone who expected to walk free. Judge Patricia Reynolds surveyed the courtroom with obvious displeasure, her reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. "This case has received undue media attention," she announced, glaring at the journalist in the back row. "I want to make myself absolutely clear. Emotional outbursts will result in immediate removal." She made pointed eye contact with both sides of the gallery during this warning. "This case must be decided on facts alone, not community sentiment or loyalty," she added, her voice carrying particular emphasis. Elijah noticed the judge's hand trembling slightly as she shuffled papers. A bailiff stood unusually close to her bench, scanning the crowd constantly. District Attorney Sarah Andrews approached Maya with clear hesitation. She leaned down, whispering intensely, "Are you absolutely certain? We can still use the recording alone." Elijah overheard fragments. "His age, trauma, defense will be brutal." Maya gripped Andrew's wrist and said firmly, "He needs to be seen. They need to hear it from him." The district attorney's assistant shook his head slightly, clearly disagreeing with the strategy. Elijah watched Andrews arrange and rearrange her papers, betraying her nervousness. The prosecution team kept glancing at the clock, as if hoping for a last-minute reprieve. When the time came, the bailiff needed to adjust the microphone dramatically lower for Elijah. The leather chair dwarfed him, his feet dangling well above the floor. He wore his father's tie pin, a small gold mortar and pestle symbolizing the pharmacy. "Please state your name," the clerk instructed. "Elijah David Johnson," he replied, his initial response barely audible. The judge gently asked him to speak up, with unexpected kindness in her voice. Elijah's second attempt came out, clear and measured, surprising those expecting a timid child. "Elijah David Johnson," he repeated with perfect diction. He placed his hand on the Bible with careful reverence, having practiced this moment at home with his mother. The courtroom fell into absolute silence, the air conditioning suddenly seeming loud. District Attorney Andrews approached cautiously, standing at a careful distance. "Elijah, how old are you?" she began. 10 years and 7 months, he answered precisely. "And what grade are you in at school?" "5th grade at Lincoln Elementary, though I take advanced math with the 6th grade class." The officers shifted uncomfortably, as Elijah demonstrated exceptional recall, answering questions about dates and times with unusual precision for a child his age. Andrews gradually established his position that day, his direct line of sight into the pharmacy's back room where his father worked. Then came the critical question, after a careful build-up. "Elijah, is the person who shot your father in this courtroom today?" Time seemed to stretch as everyone held their breath. Elijah looked first at his mother, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, uncomfortably loud in the silence. Elijah took a deep breath, sat up straighter, suddenly appearing older than his 10 years. His arm rose slowly but steadily, with no hesitation in the movement. His finger extended directly at Officer Reeves, unwavering. His voice changed, taking on his father's cadence. "He killed my daddy, but that's not all he did." The unscripted addition caught even District Attorney Andrews by surprise. Elijah's eyes never left Reeves, a child challenging a grown man without fear. The pointed finger didn't tremble, as if his father's spirit steadied his son's hand. Reeves' confident facade cracked momentarily, a flash of genuine fear crossing his face. The courtroom's energy shifted palpably, the balance of power tilting, unexpectedly. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reeves's attorney half rose, mouth open to object. An officer in the gallery involuntarily uttered, "That's a damn lie," loud enough to be heard. Someone on the community side began to clap, quickly silenced by the bailiff. Reeves' face flushed dark red, a vein pulsing visibly in his temple. He leaned to whisper urgently to his attorney, gesturing angrily. Maya covered her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face. Journalists scribbled frantically, some slipping out to break the news. The judge's gavel came down 3 times, each crack like a gunshot. "Order! I will have order in this court." As chaos erupted, Elijah's focus narrowed to Reeves's face, specifically his eyes. The courtroom sounds faded, replaced by a high-pitched ringing in his ears. Reeves's expression of controlled rage suddenly overlapped with a memory of the same expression, months earlier. The fluorescent courthouse lights flickered momentarily, triggering a cascade of sensory memories. Elijah felt himself falling backward in time, the present dissolving around him. The judge's voice calling for order seemed to come from very far away. Colors intensified, then faded as the memory took hold. Elijah's hand was still pointing, but he was no longer fully present in the courtroom. His last conscious thought before the flashback took him. Start at the beginning. Remember everything. 6 months earlier, sunlight streamed through the windows of the modest but well-kept Johnson home. David Johnson stood in the living room, broad-shouldered with gentle hands, adjusting a child-sized tie around Elijah's neck. "A Johnson man always looks sharp for the Lord," David said with a wink. "A Johnson man always looks sharp for the Lord," Elijah mouthed along, clearly a familiar mantra between them. In the kitchen, Maya hummed gospel music while making blueberry pancakes, David's favorite. The kitchen walls were lined with Elijah's academic achievement certificates and family photos showing camping trips, graduations, and holiday gatherings. "You quiz me, Dad," Elijah requested, eyes bright with their familiar game. David smiled. All right, smart guy, what's metoprolol used for? Easy. Beta blocker for high blood pressure and chest pain, Elijah responded promptly. Atorvastatin? Lowers cholesterol. Half-life of amoxicillin? 1 to 1.5 hours, Elijah answered confidently. David ruffled his son's hair. You'd make a fine pharmacist someday. Like you and Grandpa, Elijah beamed. Maya appeared in the doorway, elegant in a tailored blue dress. Speaking of medication, she said, giving David a loving but stern look. Did you take your blood pressure pill this morning? David placed his hand over his heart with mock offense. Woman, do you think I'd forget my own medicine? Yes, both Maya and Elijah answered simultaneously, dissolving into laughter. Their easy choreography around each other revealed years of comfortable routine. David setting the table while Maya finished cooking. Elijah knowing exactly when to bring the orange juice without being asked. A small framed photo of David's parents sat prominently displayed on the mantel, his father wearing a pharmacist's coat, identical to the one David now wore daily. As they prepared to leave for church, David led them in a family prayer, holding hands in a tight circle in the living room. Lord, we thank you for this day, for our health, and for each other. Guide us to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Amen. Amen, echoed Maya and Elijah. Later that week, Elijah sat on a stool behind the counter at Johnson Family Pharmacy, watching his father work. The pharmacy occupied a corner storefront with large windows and a hand-painted sign that had been there since his grandfather's time. Inside, vintage pharmacy fixtures blended with modern technology, preserving neighborhood history while providing up-to-date care. David greeted each customer by name, asking about specific family members and health concerns. Mrs. Taylor, how's that grandbaby doing? Still keeping you up nights? He asked an elderly woman who approached the counter. Growing like a weed, David. Doctor says he needs this medicine for his ear infection. She placed a prescription on the counter, then began counting change from her coin purse. Elijah watched as his father discreetly reduced the price when she came up short, typing something into the computer that made the total smaller. Must be a senior discount day, David said with a wink that Mrs. Taylor pretended not to notice, though her grateful smile said otherwise. The pharmacy's wall of thanks displayed cards and children's drawings from grateful community members. On Wednesdays, David maintained a small free clinic section with a volunteer doctor for those without insurance. Local teenagers worked after-school shifts, with David teaching them about business and medicine. Elijah, can you take this to your father? Asked Tanya, the pharmacy technician, handing him a stack of papers. Elijah carried them to the back office where he found his father on the phone, his expression serious. No, that price is unacceptable, David was saying firmly. My customers can't afford that increase. Either we find a compromise or I'll take my business elsewhere. After a pause, his face relaxed. That's more reasonable, thank you. Hanging up, he noticed Elijah. Negotiating with pharmaceutical representatives is an art form, son. Never accept the first offer. Elijah nodded, taking in the meticulously organized office filled with pharmacy textbooks, reference materials, and the ever-present coffee cup beside his father's reading glasses. Across town, Maya's modest law office presented a different but equally dedicated professional space. Housing rights posters and portraits of civil rights leaders adorned the walls. Maya reviewed a stack of eviction notices, identifying illegal clauses with rapid efficiency. Mrs. Washington, they can't evict you without proper notice, she explained to an elderly client. And this clause here? Completely unenforceable. The woman sighed with relief. Bless you, Mrs. Johnson, I was so worried. After Mrs. Washington left, an elderly couple arrived with homemade food, placing it on Maya's desk with ceremony. You saved our apartment, Mrs. Johnson. This is just a small thank you, the husband said. Maya's paralegal, James, poked his head in after they left. That's the 5th pro bono case this month. The partners aren't going to be happy, Maya shrugged. Some things matter more than billable hours, James. Later, Maya was on the phone with city officials, her tone professional but unyielding. The law is quite clear on this matter, My clients have rights that your office is systematically ignoring. Hanging up, she noticed a filing cabinet labeled West Side Development Cases, with an unusually thick folder inside. She pulled it out, spreading the contents across her desk and frowning at what she saw. When Elijah arrived with the lunch she'd forgotten at home, he found her practicing courtroom arguments in the mirror. The pattern of harassment is clear, Your Honor. These aren't isolated incidents but coordinated attempts to force long-term residents from their homes. Mom? Elijah interrupted. Maya started quickly gathering the papers. Elijah, I didn't hear you come in. As she took the lunch bag, her office phone rang. She answered, her expression darkening as she listened. Quickly, she deleted the message when Elijah came closer. Wrong number, she said lightly, but Elijah noticed the tension in her shoulders. On the wall behind her desk, her law degree hung beside a faded photograph of Maya as a child, standing proudly in front of a housing project building. That evening, at dinner, Elijah demonstrated his remarkable memory, reciting his mother's entire grocery list when she realized she'd left it at home. 2 gallons of milk, bread, wheat not white, eggs, orange juice with pulp, chicken thighs on sale for $1.29 per pound in aisle 7, laundry detergent, the one in the blue bottle because Dad says the green one makes him sneeze. He continued, until Maya laughed, holding up her hands in surrender. Okay, memory champion, I believe you. David looked on proudly. That gift of yours is something special, son. In Elijah's bedroom, the walls were covered with detailed drawings of things he'd observed. The pharmacist's scale at his father's shop, the courthouse where his mother worked, neighborhood buildings, all labeled with precise dates and times. His bookshelf contained notebooks where he recorded interesting things people don't think I notice, filled with surprisingly insightful observations for a 10-year-old. Later that night, Elijah pretended to be asleep on the couch but watched, through barely open eyes as his parents spoke in hushed tones. David removed a sealed envelope from inside a hollowed-out medical reference book on the shelf. Are you sure we should be doing this? Maya whispered, looking worried. If we don't, who will? David replied, spreading documents across the dining table. Elijah could see property maps and financial documents organized into neat piles. A list of names including the police chief, mayor, and West Side Partners LLC had connection lines drawn. Between them, we need more evidence, Maya argued. Nobody will take our word over theirs. We're not just doing this for us, David said firmly. We're doing it for everyone they've pushed out. Their shadows on the wall looked weary but resolute as they worked late into the night. Elijah silently memorized the documents and names before slipping back to his bedroom, storing the information away like the treasure he somehow knew it would become. Several days later, Elijah was helping his father at the pharmacy when the bell above the door jingled. Officer Michael Reeves entered with sunglasses on, removing them slowly for dramatic effect. His patrol car was parked directly in front of the entrance, lights flashing unnecessarily. Just a routine health and safety inspection, he announced, loudly enough for all customers to hear. David maintained professional courtesy, while customers watched nervously. Of course, officer. How can I help? Reeves ran white-gloved fingers along shelves, checking for dust, looking disappointed to find none. I hear some pharmacies in this area have problems with inventory control, he said with false concern. Not here, David replied evenly. We maintain strict protocols. Reeves examined the prescription log with exaggerated scrutiny, asking pointed questions about specific customers. Elijah noticed how Reeves's right hand stayed close to his weapon throughout the inspection. You've got a nice place here, Mr. Johnson, Reeves said as he prepared to leave. Would be a shame if something happened to it. The pharmacy fell silent after his departure, customers exchanging knowing looks. David's hands trembled slightly as he returned to filling prescriptions. That evening, a glossy brochure arrived in their mail slot. West Side Revival, a 21st century community, showing glass-fronted shops and luxury apartments. The local news featured Mayor Wilson cutting a ribbon, declaring a new era of prosperity. Developer Thomas Harrison, silver-haired in an expensive suit, promised opportunities for existing businesses to upgrade. Elijah studied a before, after map included in the materials. noticing their pharmacy was replaced by a chain store in the rendering. "They can't just make us disappear," David said when Elijah pointed this out. "Legally, they might be able to," Maya responded grimly. Eminent domain is powerful, especially with the right connections. Real estate agents suddenly appeared in the neighborhood, making lowball offers on properties. A "coming soon" premium retail space sign was erected across from the pharmacy. David watched elderly neighbors packing moving trucks, their buildings, sold to developers. "This isn't right," he muttered, hands clenching into fists at his sides. The following week, the basement of Friendship Baptist Church was filled beyond capacity with concerned residents. David stood at a podium with property values and displacement statistics projected behind him. "This isn't revitalization. It's removal," David said, his voice passionate but controlled. "They're not improving our neighborhood. They're replacing us." Maya distributed Know Your Rights pamphlets regarding eviction and eminent domain. From his position collecting comment cards, Elijah noticed Officer Reeves and two plainclothes officers standing at the back, taking notes and photographs. During a heated moment when someone suggested violent resistance, David firmly redirected. "We fight with facts and law, not force. That's how we win." After the meeting, as people filed out, Reeves approached David. "You're making powerful enemies, Mr. Johnson." "I'm just speaking the truth, Officer Reeves," David replied calmly. From the doorway, Elijah observed Reeves photographing license plates in the parking lot. The next day, Mrs. Gladys Turner, a 78-year-old neighborhood matriarch, came to the pharmacy for her arthritis medication. She waited until other customers left before leaning in close to David. "My nephew works for the city planning office. He says your name came up in a private meeting." Mrs. Turner refused to take her senior discount. "You save that money. You might need it soon." Her arthritic hands gripped David's wrist with surprising strength. "They don't play fair, never have." David asked for specifics, but Mrs. Turner shook her head. "My nephew's got kids to feed. He's said too much already." She mentioned other black-owned businesses that mysteriously faced problems after opposing development. First comes trouble with inspections, then maybe some inventory goes missing. Finally, insurance won't cover you. Her parting words stayed with David. "Your daddy stood his ground too. You got that from him." That night, David locked the pharmacy door early, sitting alone in the darkened space. When Maya and Elijah brought him dinner at midnight, they found him staring at a photo of his father in front of the same pharmacy decades earlier. "They think I'll scare easy," he told Maya quietly. "But this place isn't just a business. It's my father's legacy, our family's purpose in this community." 2 nights later, Elijah awakened to a car engine idling outside his window at 2:17 a.m. Parting his curtains carefully, he saw a sedan with tinted windows parked across the street. A figure with a professional camera and long lens was taking photos of their house. Using his father's old binoculars, Elijah made out a police radio on the dashboard. The photographer consulted what appeared to be blueprints or a property map between shots, then made a phone call, speaking animatedly while gesturing at the house. Elijah sketched the car's license plate in his bedside notebook, then crept to his parents' room, finding his father already awake and watching from another window. "Go back to bed, son. I see them," David whispered, his face grim in the moonlight. The next morning, David installed new deadbolts and security cameras while Maya called old law school friends for advice. Elijah found a small listening device beneath the porch swing, showing it silently to his father, who crushed it underfoot. "Looks like we've gotten someone's attention," David said, his voice steady despite the concern in his eyes. "From now on, we need to be extra careful. Remember everything you see, Elijah, everything you hear. It might be important someday." Elijah nodded solemnly, not yet understanding how prophetic his father's words would prove to be. The Johnson family's life changed subtly at first, then dramatically as winter turned to spring. What began as uncomfortable encounters with Officer Reeves soon evolved into something far more sinister. The morning after finding the listening device under their porch swing, Maya was pulled over while driving Elijah to school. It was the third time that week, "License and registration," demanded Officer Patrick Daniels, Reeves's partner. His hand rested casually on his holster as he leaned down to peer into the car. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" Maya asked, her lawyer's calm firmly in place despite her racing heart. "Your turn signal delayed by 0.5 seconds, he said with a smirk. "Safety hazard." Elijah sat quietly in the passenger seat, his eyes fixed on the dashboard clock. He silently counted the minutes as the officer took Maya's documents back to his patrol car. 27 minutes for a warning, just long enough to make him late for school. Again. The glove compartment now contained a dedicated notebook of every stop with officer names and badge numbers meticulously recorded in Maya's precise handwriting. What had once been an occasional annoyance had become routine harassment. That evening, David arrived home an hour late, his clothes rumpled and expression grim. "What happened?" Maya asked, immediately sensing something was wrong. "3 patrol. Cars surrounded me on Oak Street," he explained, sinking into a kitchen chair. "Said I matched a suspect description. Made me stand spread-eagled against the car while they ran my license." "How long?" 40 minutes. And when they finally let me go, I noticed my taillight was suddenly broken." He shook his head. "It wasn't broken when I left the pharmacy." The next day, Maya installed a dashboard camera. During her next stop, the officers demanded she turn it off. "It's my legal right to record," she argued. "Turn it off, or we'll consider it obstruction," came the reply. The family established a protocol. Text your location when stopped, call if detained longer than 15 minutes. Even Elijah's phone now had emergency contacts and instructions programmed in. One rainy evening, Elijah watched from the car as his father was made to stand in a downpour during a traffic stop, while officers stayed dry in their vehicles. Later, a sympathetic officer quietly advised David to take a different route to work. Neighbors started to avoid them, crossing the street when they approached, declining dinner invitations. The invisible wall of fear was building, exactly as intended. The harassment extended beyond traffic stops. On a Tuesday morning in April, a health inspector arrived at Johnson Family Pharmacy without notice. Elijah, helping after school, noticed the man wore an expensive watch similar to one Reeves often displayed. Anonymous complaint, the inspector cited as the reason for the surprise visit. His eyes never quite met David's as he spoke. The inspector found fault with storage temperatures that had passed inspection for years. "This refrigerator is running 0.3 degrees above regulation," he announced triumphantly. David frowned. "That's within the acceptable margin of error for the thermometer itself." The inspector ignored him, moving on to examine the prescription organization system. "This is non-compliant," he declared, pointing to a filing method that David had used for 15 years without issue. "Every pharmacy in town uses this exact system," David argued, his patience wearing thin. "Not my concern," the inspector replied coldly. The next day, a second inspector arrived for follow-up, focusing on entirely different areas than the first. Examination. By week's end, a $5,000 fine arrived with a 48-hour deadline to fix critical violations. David stayed overnight at the pharmacy, reorganizing everything according to the suddenly strict interpretations. When Elijah brought him breakfast, he found his father hollow-eyed with exhaustion. Meanwhile, Maya was researching the inspector, discovering his brother worked in the police department under Reeves's direct supervision. "It's all connected," she told David that night. "Every bit of it." A regular customer who worked for the health department whispered to David as he picked up his medication. "They're targeting specific businesses. 3 of you this month." David installed temperature monitors with backup records after his insulin. Storage was questioned. "If they want to play games with regulations, we'll document every decimal point," he told Elijah. The threats became more direct as spring advanced. Maya found a note on her windshield. "Drop the Martin case or else." The family phone rang at 3 a.m. repeatedly, with only breathing on the other end when answered. One afternoon, Elijah discovered his bicycle tires slashed in the school rack. The following week, a brick crashed through the pharmacy window, with "leave" scratched into it. The police response took over an hour, with Officer Reeves happening to be the responding officer. Probably just kids, Reeves suggested, examining the brick with gloved hands. Unless you've made enemies, Mr. Johnson. Maya received emails with photos of their home and Elijah's school schedule. David found a mock eviction notice on the pharmacy door. Coming soon, neighborhood cleanup. A funeral wreath was delivered to their home with a card reading, R.I.P. Johnson Family Business. Elijah noticed his father now carried pepper spray and checked their doors repeatedly throughout the evening. Maya installed a security system that David insisted they test nightly. The family created a safe word to use in emergencies: blueberry, Elijah's favorite pancake flavor. The harassment followed Elijah to school. After acing a history test on civil rights movements with a perfect score, Mrs. Whitman, whose brother served on the police force, accused him of cheating. "No student has ever gotten perfect scores on 3 tests in a row," she declared in front of the entire class. Elijah's face burned with humiliation. "I can recite the textbook passages from memory," he offered quietly. "Prove it," Mrs. Whitman challenged. To her visible astonishment, Elijah recited 3 pages verbatim, his perfect recall on full display. Rather than apologizing, she sent him to the principal's office for talking back. When Maya arrived, she found Elijah sitting alone in the office, next to Officer Reeves, who claimed to be on school duty. "Dishonesty often runs in families," Reeves suggested with a cold smile. Maya noticed Elijah's meticulous homework notebook was missing from his backpack. When other teachers arrived to defend Elijah, bringing evidence of his exceptional work, Maya threatened legal action for defamation. Later, Elijah overheard Mrs. Whitman on the phone. "I did what you asked, but it backfired. The kid's some kind of genius." As the pressure mounted, Maya noticed a pattern in her housing discrimination cases. 6 clients from the same neighborhood faced eviction after police reports of disturbances, all reports filed by officers connected to Reeves's precinct. Her client, Maria Vasquez, showed Maya police reports with identical language but different dates. "It's like they used the same form and just changed the date," Maria observed. Maya pulled property records, discovering all affected buildings had been recently purchased by shell companies. Further investigation revealed these shell companies traced back to Westside Development Partners. A client played a voicemail for Maya. "The officer said if I fight the eviction, he'll call child services. I can't risk losing my kids." Maya visited a senior housing complex where residents whispered about police wellness checks that always found violations. One elderly client showed Maya a photo of Officer Reeves with the development company CEO at a charity golf tournament. "They act like they're on opposite sides, but look," the old man said, tapping the photograph. "They're buddies." Maya created a secure online database to document the pattern, accessible only with 2-factor authentication. "We need to connect all the dots," she told David. "This is bigger than just us." David began his own investigation, creating a map on the pharmacy back office wall, marking affected businesses with red pins. When completed, the pins perfectly outlined Phase 1 of the Westside Development Project. He discovered other business owners suddenly prescribed anxiety medications. Comparing notes with a restaurant owner who received health violations after 20 years of clean inspections, David found a pattern emerging. A barbershop experienced mysterious electrical problems after refusing to sell. The hardware store faced sudden tax audits and license reviews. All businesses cited used the same rotating group of inspectors. Most telling of all, businesses who sold received perfect inspection scores the month before sale, as if rewarded for compliance. "They're clearing us out systematically," David told Maya as they reviewed his findings. "First the pressure, then the offer, then more pressure until people break." The business owners began to meet secretly to share information, gathering in the back room of Johnson Pharmacy after hours. David photographed the evidence map and removed it before official pharmacy inspections, knowing it would only intensify their targeting. By early summer, the Johnsons' dining room table was covered with string-connecting photos and documents, a visual representation of the corruption they'd uncovered. Maya had created a flowchart of money from development companies to campaign contributions. Property records showed Police Chief Williams' wife purchasing investment properties before development announcements were made public. Bank statements revealed suspicious deposits to inspection officials after key business closures. A list of Police officers receiving promotions after businesses in their patrol areas closed or sold pointed to departmental involvement. Documents confirmed Officer Reeves lived in a luxury apartment owned by a development subsidiary. "It's not just a few bad officers," Maya said grimly. "The whole system is compromised." David uncovered a pharmaceutical connection. The chain pharmacy slated to replace his was owned by a company where the police chief's brother served as an executive. Elijah contributed his observations. Specific officers patrolled only development-targeted areas, while other neighborhoods saw minimal police presence. As evidence mounted, so did the danger. David installed hidden cameras throughout the pharmacy, disguised in everyday objects. He gave Elijah a voice-activated watch recorder. "Press this button twice if you see Officer Reeves," he instructed his son. "Record everything that happens." Maya created an encrypted email account that automatically forwarded evidence to trusted journalists, if not accessed for 72 hours. David showed Elijah secret compartments in the pharmacy floor. "If anything happens, remember where these are," he said, his expression more serious than Elijah had ever seen. The family established code words for different situations. Red umbrella meant record everything happening. Maya met with a digital security expert who installed protection on their devices. David taught Elijah memory techniques for license plates and badge numbers. A hidden thumb drive in Elijah's action figure contained backup copies of key evidence. "Remember," David told Elijah one night, "sometimes the most important thing you can do is remember. The truth has power, but only if someone is brave enough to tell it." Their preparations weren't just precautionary. One evening after a court hearing, Rookie Officer Teresa Lewis lingered as Maya packed her briefcase. She followed Maya to the parking garage, nervously checking over her shoulder. "I didn't sign up for this," Officer Lewis whispered. "My family lives in the neighborhood too." She passed Maya a note about weekly target updates in the precinct basement. "Reeves maintains a separate file system outside official records," Lewis revealed, her voice barely audible. "They call it community improvement assignments. It's all coordinated with developers." Lewis explained the pattern. First came surveillance, then citations, finally, incident creation. "Reeves keeps talking about your family. He's obsessed with making an example of you." She provided information about a scheduled pharmacy inspection, with planted evidence already planned. When Maya offered protection, Lewis left hastily. "They're watching me too. Destroy this note." The breaking point came on a warm June evening. Officer Reeves knocked on their front door during dinner, his patrol car parked visibly in the driveway. "Just a community wellness check," he announced, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We care about our neighborhood families." Reeves noted specific details about their home. "Nice family photos. Elijah's school picture turned out well." He made pointed references to Elijah's schedule. "Middle school starts earlier next year. 7:45, isn't it?" David positioned himself between Reeves and Elijah, tension visible in his shoulders. "We're fine, officer. Thank you for your concern." Reeves noticed their new security system. "Those cameras don't always capture everything, you know." He mentioned recent drug activity near Elijah's route to school. "You can never be too careful with children." Maya recorded the interaction discreetly with her phone in her pocket. Before leaving, Reeves left his business card on the entryway table. "Call me directly if you see anything suspicious, day or night." After he left, Elijah had a panic attack, revealing Reeves had been parked outside his school 3 times that week. "He just sits there, watching us at recess," Elijah gasped between sobs. David and Maya exchanged grim looks over their son's head. "We're out of time," David said softly. "We need to move faster." 3 nights after Reeves's wellness check, David's phone vibrated at 11:38 p.m. with a text from an unknown number. "Meeting tonight. Supermarket lot. Midnight." David slipped out of bed, telling Maya he'd received a tip about something happening tonight. "I'll be careful," he promised, kissing her forehead. Unknown to either parent, Elijah woke at the sound of the front door closing. Something in his father's secretive departure triggered an alarm in his mind. He quickly dressed and followed, keeping to the shadows as his father had taught him during their spy games. The empty supermarket parking lot lay 6 blocks away. Elijah hid behind a dumpster, activating his recording watch as his father had instructed. David positioned himself behind an abandoned shopping cart corral, his own phone held low, camera, likely recording. At precisely midnight, Officer Reeves arrived in an unmarked sedan. He was joined by Thomas Harrison, the silver-haired developer from the brochures, and Councilman Frank Porter, who chaired the city planning committee. "The Phase 2 announcement goes public next week," Harrison said, lighting an expensive cigar. "We need the obstacles cleared." Reeves nodded. "Johnson is the linchpin. If he goes, the others will fold." "The code violations haven't worked?" Porter asked. "Insufficient pressure," Reeves replied. "He documents everything, fixes it all to the letter." The councilman suggested eminent domain, but Reeves shook his head. "Too public, too many questions. The mayor wants this handled quietly." "I don't care how you do it," Harrison said, blowing smoke rings into the night air. "But that corner needs to be vacant by quarter's end. The investors are getting impatient." The men discussed cash bonuses for each property acquisition, with specific amounts for the pharmacy location. "Johnson has evidence," Reeves said, his voice tighter than before. "He's been documenting everything." "Then find it," Harrison ordered, "and make it disappear." The men planned a pharmacy raid. "We plant enough to put him away, problem solved," Reeves suggested. Elijah gasped involuntarily, knocking over an empty bottle. It clattered across the asphalt, causing all three men to turn in his direction. "What was that?" Porter demanded. "Probably just a cat," Reeves said, but he moved toward the dumpster, hand on his weapon. Elijah slipped away in the darkness, scrambling home through backyards and side streets. He arrived just minutes before his father returned, pretending to be asleep when David checked on him. Under his blankets, Elijah clutched the recording watch, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had evidence now, real evidence of what they were planning. The next morning brought new troubles. David's pharmaceutical supplier called. "I can't deliver your order this week." "Why not?" "We've done business for 15 years, David pressed. "I'm sorry. That's all I can say." The line went dead. David drove to the warehouse personally, finding the manager nervous and evasive. "I've got a family too, David," the man finally admitted, glancing at security cameras overhead. "They made it clear what would happen if I kept supplying you." Over the next few days, David discovered all local suppliers had received similar warnings. One supplier showed David a police report falsely claiming his pharmacy was under investigation for illegal distribution. Meanwhile, chain pharmacies received notification to prepare for increased neighborhood demand, a clear indication they anticipated Johnson Pharmacy's closure. A longtime delivery driver secretly provided a name. Captain Miller had authorized the supplier notifications. Maya's research revealed Captain Miller's brother-in-law sat on the board of the development company. The final blow came when David found a hand-delivered letter from the state pharmacy board about an anonymous complaint. Maya made emergency calls to suppliers in neighboring states while David drove 4 hours to collect critical medications for patients who couldn't wait. "They're trying to cut off our supply lines," David told Maya that night. "Without inventory, we can't serve the community. Without serving the community, we have no business." "They want us desperate," Maya observed. "Desperate enough to sell." On the legal front, Maya was facing her own crisis. Her strongest housing discrimination case, the Martin family eviction, suddenly unraveled. She arrived at court to find the clerk looking confused. "That case was dismissed yesterday," he informed her. "That's impossible. I'm the attorney of record. I would have been notified." Investigation revealed the case file's evidence exhibits were missing, including police harassment documentation. The judge's dismissal cited insufficient evidence, despite Maya having submitted extensive documentation just days earlier. Security footage of the file room was mysteriously corrupted during the hours the files went missing. The court reporter's transcript had key testimony from police witnesses removed. Maya's paralegal discovered 3 other housing cases similarly undermined in recent weeks, all connected to properties in the development zone. The Martin family called in panic. "They've scheduled our eviction for tomorrow despite the legal stay." Maya rushed to an emergency hearing, finding a different judge assigned, one with known connections to developers. Her frantic call to David summed up their situation. They're not just bending the system. They own it. That night, Maya connected with attorneys in 5 other cities facing similar development patterns. A video conference revealed identical tactics: police harassment preceding development announcements, minority-owned businesses targeted. First, creating divided community response. News articles from multiple cities showed the same developers operating under different names. Statistical analysis revealed a 300% increase in code violations in minority neighborhoods before development. Federal housing data showed systematic displacement patterns in gentrifying neighborhoods. Maya discovered a police training conference, sponsored by development companies, Urban Renewal Security Protocols. It's a nationwide playbook, she told David. We're not just fighting local corruption, we're fighting an established system. David found pharmacy association warnings about targeted closures of independent pharmacies in development zones. Elijah helped create a timeline showing their city following the exact pattern of 3 previous cities where Westside Development had projects. Following the money proved equally revealing. Maya traced property purchases to shell companies with obscured ownership. Financial records showed the police pension fund investing heavily in development company stock. Bank records revealed suspicious deposits to Reeves's account following business closures. Offshore accounts linked to city officials received consulting fees from developer subsidiaries. The mayor's daughter had been employed by the development company at a suspiciously high salary, despite minimal qualifications. Tax records showed property value reassessments benefiting development-friendly businesses. This isn't just corruption, said Maya's financial analyst friend after reviewing their evidence. It's organized racketeering. David found his pharmacy insurance premiums had suddenly tripled with no explanation. With mounting evidence but growing danger, David arranged to meet investigative journalist Samantha Watson in a diner 2 towns over. He chose a location without security cameras, paid cash, and used public transportation to avoid being followed. Samantha had previously exposed corruption in the police department 5 years ago, resulting in several resignations. David provided select evidence, enough to interest her, but withholding key documentation. If anything happens to me, my wife has instructions to contact you with everything else, he told her. Samantha warned that her previous police investigation had resulted in threats to her family. The department has changed leadership, but the culture remains the same. As they spoke, David noticed a suspicious man taking photos through the window. The meeting ended abruptly, with both taking elaborate routes home to ensure they weren't followed. Their caution proved warranted. 3 nights later, the pharmacy's security alarm triggered at 3:17 a.m. David and Maya rushed to the scene to find police already there. Officer Reeves happened to be patrolling nearby. The front window had been shattered, but oddly, the glass was carefully swept into a pile rather than scattered naturally. The surveillance equipment was missing, but the safe remained untouched despite being in plain view. Prescription medications were undisturbed, except for empty bottles placed in unusual positions. Evidence showed careful searching. Drawers partially open, files riffled through. David's hidden backup camera, inside the wall clock, captured images of uniformed officers searching through papers. One frame clearly showed Officer Reeves examining the wall where David's conspiracy map had been, looking disappointed. The police report described a random vandalism despite clear signs of a targeted search. The insurance adjuster suggested the claim might be denied due to suspicious circumstances. When they were finally allowed back inside, David found a small police badge pin deliberately left on his desk, a calling card. "They're looking for our evidence," he told Maya as they drove home. "They know we have something." Maya had her own disturbing news. Officer Lewis, who had promised to provide additional evidence, missed their scheduled meeting. Lewis's partner claimed she had called in sick, looking uncomfortable with the question. Maya drove past Lewis's house, seeing her car but getting no response to knocks. 3 days later, Lewis was discovered beaten in an alley near the precinct. Titur. Official report claimed she had interrupted a robbery, despite nothing being stolen. Maya visited Lewis in the hospital, finding the door guarded by 2 officers from Reeves's unit. Lewis turned away when seeing Maya. "I have nothing to say to you." After Maya left, Lewis's hospital roommate called Maya from a payphone. "Officers visited repeatedly before you came. One of them, Reeves I think his name was, told her that her children were being watched at school." Maya noticed Lewis had requested a transfer to another city. The message was clear: help the Johnsons and suffer the consequences. That night, with Elijah supposedly asleep, Maya and David argued intensely in the kitchen. "We need to take Elijah and leave. Tonight. Go to my sister's in Atlanta," Maya insisted. "If we run, they win," David countered. "Everything we've built, everything my father built, gone. I'd rather have a living husband than a dead hero. They're not playing games anymore." Elijah sat on the staircase recording the argument, his face streaked with tears. "What message does running send to Elijah? That we abandon our community? When things get tough," David demanded. Maya threw a stack of threatening letters across the kitchen table. "What message does your death send? Because that's where this is heading." Her next word stopped both David and the eavesdropping Elijah cold. "And it's not just about us anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm pregnant, David. 8 weeks." David's expression softened. He wrapped his arms around Maya, resting his chin on her head. "All the more reason to stand our ground. What kind of world will they be born into if we don't?" After a long silence, Maya offered a tearful ultimatum. 3 more days. If we don't have enough to take to the FBI by then, we leave." David nodded. 3 days. Elijah slipped back to bed before being discovered, lying awake planning his own evidence collection. His father's words echoed in his mind. Remember everything. The next night, Elijah found his father in the pharmacy office at midnight, carefully organizing documents. David was startled, but then invited him in. "I suppose, you should know this too." He showed Elijah a map of secure locations where evidence copies were hidden. "If anything happens to me, people need to know the truth. All of it." David placed USB drives in waterproof containers, sealing them carefully. He taught Elijah a specific email protocol to activate if David didn't enter a weekly code. "This sends everything to people who can help: journalists, FBI, trusted lawyers." David showed Elijah a secret compartment behind the bathroom tile in their home. Inside, cash, prepaid phones, emergency contact numbers, and bus tickets to Atlanta. "Your job is to protect your mother and the baby no matter what. Everything else is secondary." His father's next words burned into Elijah's memory. "Johnson men stand for truth, even when it's dangerous. It's what my father taught me, and what I'm teaching you." The two made a solemn pinky promise between them. Remember everything. Neither realized this would be their last private conversation, or that within 48 hours Elijah would be called upon to honor that promise in ways they couldn't imagine. The morning dawned deceptively beautiful. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as the Johnson family gathered for breakfast. David made pancakes, something he usually only did on weekends. "What's the occasion?" Maya asked, eyebrow raised as she accepted a plate stacked high with blueberry pancakes. "No occasion," David replied, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just thought we could use something special today." Elijah noticed his father's unusual attentiveness, the way he asked detailed questions about Elijah's science project, his careful attention to Maya's schedule for the day, the extra tight hug before Elijah left for school. "Be good, son," David said, holding on a moment longer than usual. "I'm so proud of the man you're becoming." Later, Elijah would replay this moment in his mind 1,000 times. The way his father stood in the doorway, watching him walk to school until he turned the corner. It was the last time he would see his father alive. At 2:14 p.m., a woman in her mid-40s entered Johnson Family Pharmacy. She wore large sunglasses despite the cloudy day outside, nervously checking the street before approaching the counter. "I need to speak with David Johnson," she said, her voice pitched slightly too loud. Tanya, the pharmacy technician, gestured toward David in the back. "He's right over there, ma'am." The woman, Jennifer Baker, according to the pharmacy's security camera footage, approached David, claiming to need non-prescription medication for allergies. When the technician turned away, she slipped an envelope across the counter. David's face changed upon seeing the contents, shock followed by grim determination. He immediately took her to the small consulting room used for private patient discussions. Their conversation lasted exactly 7 minutes, though no audio was recorded. When David emerged, his face was pale. He immediately called Maya, their conversation brief and urgent. Jennifer left through the back door, David locking it behind her. Tanya later reported seeing David empty the register into an envelope, adding his own cash. "If anyone asks, she had a medical emergency and left," he instructed the staff. A USB drive was visible in David's hand after the meeting. He quickly secured it in the hidden office safe before returning to fill prescriptions, though his mind seemed elsewhere. At the courthouse across town, Maya was filing emergency injunctions for multiple clients when a clerk passed her a note. "Anonymous call. Go to pharmacy immediately." Maya tried to reach David, her calls going straight to voicemail. Her texts showed as delivered but unread. The pharmacy landline returned only a busy signal despite having multiple lines. Growing increasingly anxious, Maya called Elijah's school to make sure he was safe, requesting he stay in the after-school program. Her paralegal reported police scanner chatter about a situation at Johnson Pharmacy. Maya ran red lights driving across town, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She noticed multiple police vehicles heading in the same direction, using emergency lights without sirens, an unusual combination that heightened her dread. She called their trusted neighbor, Mrs. Turner. "Margaret, can you see what's happening at the pharmacy? David's not answering." The elderly woman's breathless response sent ice through Maya's veins. "There are police everywhere. Something's wrong, child." Meanwhile, in math class, Elijah doubled. Over with sudden intense stomach pain, the school nurse found no fever, but suggested anxiety might be the cause. "Has anything been bothering you lately, Elijah?" she asked gently. Elijah didn't answer. The classroom clock showed 2:22 p.m. when an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Sometimes your body knows things before your mind does." "I need to leave," Elijah insisted suddenly. "My dad needs me." "Something's wrong." His teacher refused, citing school policy about parental permission. As Elijah's behavior grew more agitated, the school counselor was called in. "Your father is fine," the counselor assured him. "Let's talk about what's really bothering you." But Elijah knew something was terribly wrong. When the fire alarm sounded for a scheduled drill, he seized his opportunity. In the confusion of students lining up, he slipped away unnoticed. Taking shortcuts through neighborhood backyards, Elijah ran at full speed toward the pharmacy, activating his recording watch as his father had taught him. His heart pounded against his ribs as he neared the familiar storefront, now surrounded by police vehicles. Inside the pharmacy, David had been filling prescriptions when the door chime announced new arrivals. Officer Reeves entered with 2 plainclothes officers, blocking both the front entrance and the path to the back door. "We received an anonymous tip about illegal prescription sales," Reeves announced, his voice carrying through the store. David maintained his composure. "My attorney should be present for any inspection." "This isn't an inspection," Reeves replied coldly. "It's a raid. We have cause to believe you're dealing." The plainclothes officers began clearing the pharmacy of customers and staff despite protests. Security cameras captured Reeves directing officers to specific areas, carefully avoiding David's hidden cameras. "I'd like to call my attorney," David repeated, reaching for the phone on the counter. "That can wait," Reeves responded, producing a search warrant with suspiciously broad parameters. "We know about your meeting with Jennifer Baker," Reeves continued, his smile predatory. "She's already talking." David's composed exterior cracked at the mention of Baker. "What have you done to her?" "Cooperation can make things easier for everyone involved," Reeves said, ignoring the question. The officers searched the stockroom with unusual precision, going directly to specific shelves as if they already knew what they were looking for. One officer discovered an unmarked bottle behind legitimate medication. "Looks like illegal opioids to me," Reeves said theatrically, holding up the bottle. "That's impossible," David protested. "I inventory everything personally." A second officer found an envelope of cash in an unusual location, the exact amount missing from the register plus David's personal funds. "This is being planted." David's voice rose with frustration. "Check my security footage." As if on cue, an officer accidentally damaged the visible security cameras during the search. Reeves produced photos of David meeting Jennifer Baker. "Your distributor for illegal prescriptions," he declared triumphantly. David realized Baker had been coerced or was working with police. "What did you threaten her with?" Reeves ignored the question, beginning to read Miranda rights with satisfaction. David noticed a small recorder blinking in one officer's pocket, understanding the scenario was being staged for official records. Through the back window, David caught sight of movement. Elijah's face peering in, eyes wide with fear. In that moment, David also saw Maya's car pulling up outside. "Before you continue this charade," David said firmly, "you should know I have evidence of everything." He detailed the corruption evidence, including recordings of Reeves's midnight meeting with the developers. "It all gets released automatically unless I enter a code tonight. Even if you arrest me." David reached slowly toward his phone. "I'm calling my attorney now, as is my right." Reeves glanced at the other officers, silent communication passing between them. The atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. "It's over, Reeves," David continued. "The FBI gets everything tomorrow morning." As David's hand moved toward his phone on the counter, Reeves's face transformed from confidence to cornered rage. Making eye contact with Elijah through the back window, David gave a subtle headshake, warning his son to stay hidden. It was his final act of protection. Maya reached the pharmacy front door just as David retrieved his phone. Through the glass, she saw Reeves's hand move to his weapon. "Gun!" Reeves shouted, despite the phone clearly visible in David's hand. 2 shots exploded in the small space, the sound momentarily deafening. David's expression registered shock rather than pain as he looked down at the spreading red stain on his white pharmacy coat. His last words were captured on his hidden recording. "Maya, Elijah, remember." From Elijah's perspective through the window, his father fell in slow motion, collapsing behind the counter. Maya's scream from the front of the store pierced the air as she broke through the door. With practiced efficiency, Reeves planted his backup weapon near David's outstretched hand. The other officers' expressions registered momentary shock. This wasn't part of the plan. "He went for a weapon," Reeves told them coldly. "We all saw it." Frozen outside the window, Elijah pressed, his hand against the glass unnoticed in the chaos. His watch recorder captured every sound, his eyes documenting every visual detail with the perfect recall that had once been a source of family pride. Maya fought to reach David, officers restraining her. "That's my husband." "This is a crime scene. Now." Reeves blocked her path. Elijah registered critical details. No weapon near his father until after the shooting. The response times: shooting at 2:47 p.m., backup arriving at 2:49 p.m., paramedics not until 3:05 p.m. He heard Reeves on the radio. "Shots fired, officer involved, suspect down." His voice completely calm, as if reporting the weather. "One younger." Officer vomited in the corner, clearly distressed by what had transpired. Moving silently to the pharmacy's back entrance, Elijah used the key his father had given him. While officers focused on the front scene, he retrieved the USB drive from the hidden compartment his father had shown him just days before. The final image seared into his memory. His father's unseeing eyes, hands still reaching toward the phone. That might have saved him. Within minutes, police response became overwhelming. 14 vehicles arrived, despite no officer injury being reported. Crime scene tape created a perimeter extending unusually far from the building. Officer James Wilson, Reeves's loyal colleague, took witness statements, visibly directing answers toward the narrative they wanted to establish. News vans arrived, a police spokesman already prepared with a detailed statement suggesting prior knowledge. Maya was held in a patrol car, denied access to David's body or the scene. Reeves emerged, immediately surrounded by a protective circle of fellow officers. Evidence technicians were directed to specific areas, avoiding others without explanation. pharmacy. Customers gathered across the street, kept at a distance. Those who questioned the police narrative were identified by plainclothes officers for later visits. Maya's repeated requests for her attorney were ignored. "This doesn't concern you." Yet, Police Chief Williams arrived personally, huddling with Reeves before official statements were made. Elijah hid in the growing crowd, recording watch still active, memorizing faces and actions. He overheard a paramedic telling his partner, "He was dead before we arrived. They waited too long to call us." By evening, the official story had already solidified. The news lead story proclaimed, "Local pharmacist killed in drug enforcement operation." The police chief's press conference announced, "The discovery of significant quantities of illegally distributed prescription medications." Carefully edited body cam footage released showed only the moment David reached for his phone, conveniently cutting before showing it was not a weapon. News graphics depicted Johnson Pharmacy as the center of a neighborhood drug distribution network. Unnamed police sources revealed previous investigations into the establishment. Mayor Wilson expressed sadness but support for our officers in dangerous situations. Selective criminal background information was released. David's college protest arrest was highlighted, while his community service record and professional accolades went unmentioned. Social media campaigns emerged with suspicious coordination, promoting the hashtag, "Bad Business is Out." The development company press release was postponed, out of respect, but classified emails later revealed internal discussions about fortuitous timing. Elijah watched the reports in horrified silence, recording each lie in the journal his father had given him. His perfect memory, once a source of academic pride, now became a vault preserving the truth no one else seemed willing to acknowledge. Rain fell in sheets the morning of David Johnson's funeral. Friendship Baptist Church overflowed with mourners, despite the downpour, many standing outside under umbrellas. Unmarked police cars photographed attendees from across the street, officers noting license plate numbers and faces. Pastor Williams delivered a eulogy, carefully avoiding mention of the circumstances. David Johnson was taken from us too soon. His dedication to this community, his love for his family, and his generous spirit leave a legacy that will endure. Maya sat in the front pew, physically supported by her sister Nicole, who had flown in from Atlanta. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale against her black dress. Beside her, Elijah remained stoic beyond his years, his back straight, his expression unreadable as he scanned the mourners, identifying 5 undercover officers among them. During the service, Officer Reeves drove slowly past the church, making deliberate eye contact with Elijah through the window. The message was clear: I'm watching, always watching. Community members whispered about trouble for attending, some leaving early when they spotted the surveillance. David's pharmacy colleagues spoke about his ethics and care for the community, their voices quavering with emotion and fear. Maya had prepared a speech, but the funeral director intervened at the last minute. Best to keep things non-controversial, he advised, showing her a text message from someone he wouldn't name. At the cemetery, the service was interrupted by a drone hovering overhead, its camera clearly directed at the mourners. Maya's brother spotted it and, in a moment of rage, shot it down with a well-aimed rock. Elijah stood before his father's casket, carefully placing David's pharmacist pin atop the polished wood. "I remember everything," he whispered. "I promise." In the weeks that followed, Justice for David signs appeared in some windows around the neighborhood, only to be quickly removed after police welfare checks to those homes. Longtime family friends crossed the street to avoid Maya and Elijah, fear of association overriding decades of friendship. A community meeting at church drew sparse attendance, the empty chairs speaking volumes about the climate of intimidation that had descended. Local business owners expressed sympathy privately but kept their distance publicly. Anonymous support emerged in small ways. Groceries left on the Johnson porch, envelopes of cash in the mailbox, notes of condolence without signatures. David's regular pharmacy customers divided, some defending him fiercely, others questioning if they knew him at all. Neighborhood watch groups suddenly began monitoring the Johnson home, reporting visitors to the police. The development company seized the opportunity, offering to purchase homes at premium rates for those uncomfortable with recent events. Many sold, particularly those nearest to the Johnson residence. Maya overheard mothers at school pickup whispering, "I can't let my kids play with Elijah now. What if police are watching his house?" The pastor received pressure to scale back church support for the family. Only a few brave allies stood firm, most notably Mrs. Turner, who brought food daily, declaring loudly for anyone listening, "They killed this boy's father. They won't starve him too." Financial pressures mounted immediately. A formal letter from the mortgage company arrived citing review of loan circumstances. Maya discovered a second mortgage David allegedly took out 3 months prior, with paperwork bearing a signature that didn't match his handwriting. Her research revealed the mortgage company had been recently acquired by a development-linked bank. A property tax reassessment arrived showing a 40% increase with a 30-day payment window. Their home insurance was abruptly canceled due to increased risk factors in neighborhood. Water damage appeared in the basement from a mysterious pipe, break at street level that no other homes experienced. A city inspector declared the house potentially unsafe after an anonymous complaint. Neighbors on both sides received lucrative offers to sell, creating physical isolation as houses were quickly demolished for preparation work. A foreclosure notice appeared despite Maya's legal challenges. Her sister offered their Atlanta home. Again, "This house isn't worth your lives." Elijah found survey markers placed on their property without permission, removing them nightly, only to find them replaced each morning. Through it all, Elijah remained silent. For 32 days after the shooting, he didn't speak a single word, communicating only through written notes. The school psychologist expressed concern about selective mutism caused by trauma, recommending therapy that Maya couldn't afford now that David's income was gone. Elijah's bedroom walls became covered with intricate diagrams connecting events, incomprehensible to anyone but him. His journal entries grew increasingly detailed, recording overheard conversations verbatim with times, dates, and speakers precisely noted. Maya found him sleepwalking one night, arranging items in the living room to exactly the position they had been in before David died. In his closet, hidden behind clothes, he created a replica of his father's evidence wall. He developed a complex code system in his notebooks that only he understood, refusing to relinquish his father's watch, sleeping with it clasped tightly to his chest. Maya discovered he recorded everything: conversations, news reports, phone calls. His entire existence had become devoted to preserving what others sought to erase. After 32 days of silence, Elijah spoke his first words to his grandmother while she prepared dinner in their kitchen. "They're lying about Dad," he said, quietly. "I can prove it." His teachers reported he wrote obsessively during class, filling notebook after notebook with his precise handwriting. They worried about his fixation, but couldn't deny his academic performance remained exceptional, despite his trauma. Meanwhile, the police department announced a thorough review of the shooting incident. The investigative team was composed entirely of officers from Reeves's precinct, a fact local media failed to mention. Interview requests were sent to Maya at an incorrect address, then marked "refuse to cooperate" in the final report. Witness statements were selectively edited, with key contradictions omitted. Officer Reeves received paid administrative leave, described as standard procedure, while being privately assured his job was secure. The investigation was completed, in record time, just 12 days, with findings announced Friday evening to minimize news coverage. The official conclusion declared, "Officer acted within departmental guidelines when faced with perceived threat." The press conference refused questions, directing all inquiries to the police union attorney. When the investigative report was finally provided to Maya's attorney, it arrived heavily redacted, with entire pages blacked out citing ongoing security concerns. The ballistics analysis omitted critical details about the angle of shots and distance. The medical examiner was pressured to modify initial findings about entry wounds that contradicted the official narrative. Body camera footage from 2 officers was mysteriously corrupted, while footage from Reeves's camera was available but missing. 2 crucial minutes before the shooting, the department announced mandatory retraining as the sole consequence, presented as a proactive measure rather than a response to wrongdoing. Internal messages, later leaked, congratulated the team on efficient resolution of the case. Reeves returned to duty after minimal leave, receiving informal congratulations from superior officers. Maya's formal complaints were labeled emotionally motivated and dismissed without investigation. Despite the official closure, Maya discovered David's weekly coded email hadn't been sent, triggering his automated evidence release system. Trusted friends began contacting her about receiving encrypted files with instructions to hold them securely. Maya found directions hidden in Elijah's favorite book about accessing secure cloud storage containing duplicates of everything. The TOW, voice-activated safe in the pharmacy basement, now under police control, contained original documents and recordings they couldn't access. David's pharmacy assistant revealed a hidden compartment behind the bathroom tile containing flash drives with additional backup files. Maya learned David had been working with a federal pharmacy investigator before his death, though their contact information was lost in the chaos. The encrypted message system between evidence holders prevented coordination from being tracked, a precaution that now seemed prescient given the surveillance they faced. Journalist Samantha Watson contacted Maya. "David sent me something the day he died. We need to meet." For 3 nights straight, Maya and Elijah worked through evidence pieces, creating a comprehensive timeline of events leading to David's death. The picture that emerged was far more damning than even they had suspected. When Maya finally approached District Attorney Sarah Andrews with their findings, she was initially rejected. "The case is closed," Andrews informed her coldly. Only after public pressure from community activists did Andrews finally agree to a brief appointment. Even then, she remained dismissive until presented with the recording of Reeves's midnight meeting with the developers. "This isn't sufficient," Andrews argued. "It's circumstantial and could be manipulated." Maya revealed David's pharmaceutical board contact had been investigating Reeves's brother for prescription fraud, creating a powerful motive beyond the development project. Andrews' interest visibly increased. "If your husband had this evidence, why didn't he bring it forward sooner?" Maya showed Andrews the threats, surveillance photos, and information about Officer Lewis's beating. As Andrews reviewed David's autopsy photos, she noticed discrepancies with the official report that couldn't be easily explained away. "The department has significant influence with the judiciary and mayor's office," Andrews admitted privately. "Building a case would be challenging." After Maya left, a security camera captured Andrews making a secure call to a Department of Justice contact, photographing key evidence with her personal phone. Meanwhile, Samantha Watson published a carefully worded article questioning the timeline of the pharmacy raid. Without making direct accusations, she highlighted inconsistencies in official statements that even casual readers could recognize. Public records requests revealed an unusual pattern of business closures preceding development announcements. Watson connected David's case to similar incidents in nearby counties, suggesting a systematic approach rather than isolated events. An anonymous source, likely Andrews, provided Watson with a partial ballistics report contradicting official findings. The social media landscape began to shift, with what happened to David Johnson trending locally. Watson faced immediate repercussions: a home break-in where nothing was stolen, threatening messages left on her car, obvious surveillance as she conducted interviews. Her editor received pressure from major advertisers to reassign her to different stories. Undeterred, Watson created a podcast series examining gentrification enforcement patterns nationally, using David's case as a central example. Without making unprovable allegations, the police union demanded a retraction, threatening a defamation lawsuit that never materialized. Watson arranged to meet Elijah at the public library, recording his methodical timeline of events. His precision and recall stunned the experienced journalist. "You saw everything, didn't you?" she asked gently. Elijah nodded. "I was at the back window. I saw Officer Reeves shoot my dad when he was just holding his phone. Then he put a gun near him afterward." "Would you be willing to say that publicly?" Watson asked. "Mom says it's too dangerous," Elijah replied. But Dad always said the truth has power. I think he'd want me to tell it. That night, Elijah found Maya crying over the foreclosure notice at the kitchen table. The bank had accelerated the process, giving them 30 days to vacate the property. Dad said if anything happened, I have to remember everything. Elijah told her, his voice steady. I do remember, Mom. All of it. He showed Maya his coded journals, meticulously documenting months of harassment leading to the shooting. I saw everything through the pharmacy window, he confessed. I recorded it, too. Maya's initial reaction was fear. The court will be brutal to you, you're just a child. Elijah played the recording from his watch, Reeves clearly saying he went for a weapon after the shooting. The audio captured the distinctive sound of something being placed on the floor after David fell. Dad always said we have to stand up, for what's right, even when it's hard, Elijah insisted. That night, Maya made a call to District Attorney Andrews' home. My son was there, she said without preamble. He saw everything. Later, alone in his room, Elijah practiced his testimony in the mirror, his father's watch still on his wrist, the red recording light blinking steadily. I will remember everything, he promised his reflection. I will say everything. He didn't know that his words would soon stun a courtroom, or that his father's meticulous planning would ultimately bring down not just Officer Reeves, but an entire system of corruption. He only knew that remembering was the task he'd been given, and no matter how painful those memories, he would not fail. The wheels of justice turned slowly at first, then with unexpected speed. 3 weeks after Maya's call to District Attorney Andrews, a grand jury was convened in secret. Elijah and Maya arrived at the courthouse through an underground garage to avoid media attention, a precaution that proved necessary when news of the proceedings leaked later that day. Grand jury members visibly reacted when Elijah entered the room. Shock at his youth mingled with skepticism that a child could provide reliable testimony in such a serious case. District Attorney Andrews presented only the strongest evidence. Elijah's recording, witness testimony contradicting the official police report, and financial connections between Reeves and the development company. Andrews limited Elijah's testimony to 15 carefully crafted questions, each answered with a precision and clarity that belied his 10 years. The grand jury foreman, a middle-aged schoolteacher named Robert Walsh, visibly fought emotions during Elijah's account of watching his father fall. And what did you see Officer Reeves do immediately after your father fell? Andrews asked. He took a gun from his ankle holster and placed it next to my dad's hand, Elijah replied without hesitation. Then he said into his radio, "Suspect down." Went for a weapon, but Dad only had his phone. Deliberation took just 90 minutes, unusually quick for such a case involving a police officer. The indictment came down on second-degree murder charges, with lesser charges for evidence tampering and corruption. Judge Harold Simmons sealed the transcripts, officially, to protect the minor witness, though this also preserved surprise elements for trial. Police union representatives who had assured Reeves no charges would ever be filed stood stunned at the announcement. A media frenzy erupted. News crews camped outside the Johnson home, forcing Maya to install privacy screens on their windows. Elijah watched the indictment announcement on television, showing no emotion but writing extensively in his journal. The police response was immediate and overwhelming. The union hired legendary defense attorney Eleanor Bradford, a former prosecutor, with an unblemished 52-0 record defending officers accused of misconduct. The department created a legal defense fund, raising $750,000 within days through donations from police associations nationwide. Full-page newspaper ads proclaimed Reeves a hero officer persecuted for doing his job. The defense filed 27 motions to dismiss before arraignment even occurred, attempting to derail the prosecution before trial could begin. Jury selection revealed extensive defense resources. Bradford's team conducted detailed background research on every potential juror, including social media history going back years. Police officers took vacation days to pack the courtroom in uniform, creating an intimidating wall of blue during proceedings. More disturbing, the department redistributed patrol officers to increase visible presence in potential jurors' neighborhoods, a not-so-subtle reminder of who protected their homes. Bradford's opening statement masterfully portrayed David as the aggressor, a desperate man cornered in his illegal operation, willing to do anything to escape justice. She painted Reeves as a dedicated officer protecting the community from a dangerous criminal. Maya's modest legal team, one overworked public prosecutor and a volunteer attorney from the civil rights community, appeared dwarfed by the defense's 6 attorneys and multiple paralegals. Most concerning was Judge Robert Harmon's history as former police department counsel, his campaign heavily funded by the same police union now defending Reeves. The intimidation extended far beyond the courtroom. The Johnson home was vandalized 3 times in 2 weeks, police response deliberately slow each time. Liar appeared spray-painted on their garage after news of Elijah's grand jury testimony leaked. Maya's car brake lines were cut the morning of the preliminary hearing, discovered only because Mrs. Turner noticed fluid leaking in their driveway and insisted on checking before Maya drove Elijah to school. Anonymous calls to Maya's office detailed Elijah's route to school with disturbing accuracy. Unmarked cars followed them to the courthouse, parking conspicuously nearby to ensure they noticed the surveillance. Maya received photos of herself at court, with crosshairs superimposed over her face. Elijah's school principal suggested homeschooling might be best for everyone concerned. Their attorney's office was broken into, case files specifically targeted while valuable electronics remained untouched. Prosecution witnesses reported similar intimidation, several recanting testimony after unexpected tax audits or relatives receiving traffic citations. The FBI finally provided protection after Elijah found a sophisticated tracking device attached to his backpack. Court security screened Maya extensively while allowing police supporters in with minimal checks, an imbalance that spoke volumes about institutional loyalty. The defense strategy quickly emerged. Character assassination, rather than disputing the shooting facts. Bradford produced witnesses claiming to have purchased unauthorized medications from Johnson Pharmacy. Witnesses later revealed to have been paid through complex channels linked to the police union. David's college activism was portrayed as anti-police sentiment and radical tendencies. Maya's housing discrimination cases were framed as a vendetta against property owners. Bradford repeatedly suggested Elijah had been coached extensively and manipulated by his mother's prejudice. A financial expert testified about irregularities in pharmacy accounts, implying money laundering without providing evidence. Photos of David meeting with known community activists were presented as if they were suspicious criminal associations rather than normal community involvement. Character witnesses for David faced brutal cross-examination about their own minor legal issues, no matter how irrelevant or distant in the past. A medical expert questioned Elijah's capacity to accurately recall traumatic events, suggesting false memory syndrome without ever having examined him. The technical barriers continued mounting. Judge Harmon ruled Elijah's watch recording inadmissible due to chain of custody concerns, despite authentication by 2 independent experts. Financial evidence connecting Reeves to developers was excluded as irrelevant to the moment of shooting. Testimony about previous harassment was deemed prejudicial and disallowed. The defense successfully argued David's entire background in community activism created a predisposition against law enforcement that should be excluded. Maya's attorney's repeated objections were overruled, while defense objections were consistently sustained. Key prosecution witnesses had their testimony limited to such narrow parameters that context became impossible to establish. The judge allowed defense to present David's college arrest record from a civil rights demonstration, but excluded his extensive community service history as irrelevant to character. The jury was forbidden from hearing about similar excessive force complaints against Officer Reeves. Forensic evidence about weapon placement after shooting was excluded on procedural grounds, despite clear fingerprint evidence contradicting the official narrative. District Attorney Andrews grew openly frustrated, seen arguing with Judge Harmon during recess about blatant bias in his rulings. "Your Honor, the defense has been permitted to present character evidence while we've been blocked at every turn," Andrews protested. "This isn't justice, it's a performance." "Watch yourself, counselor," Harmon warned. "I won't hesitate to hold you in contempt." Just when the prosecution seemed completely hamstrung, Andrews played her final card, calling Jennifer Baker, the nervous woman from the pharmacy, as a surprise witness. The defense objected vigorously, claiming inadequate notification despite the witness being on their disclosed list for weeks. Judge Harmon reluctantly allowed the testimony after a lengthy sidebar discussion. Baker took the stand trembling visibly. "They forced me to help them," she testified, her voice barely audible at first. "Who forced you?" Andrews asked. "Officer Reeves and his partners. They threatened to deport my mother and investigate my brother's business if I didn't cooperate." Baker described receiving a package from Officer Wilson with instructions to deliver it to David Johnson and act nervous. "They told me exactly what to say, how to act. They said it was part of an undercover operation." Her detailed testimony corroborated Elijah's account and described a larger conspiracy involving multiple officers. The court sat stunned as she revealed the extent of the planning involved. Officer Reeves said they needed to make an example of Mr. Johnson. He said once they got the pharmacy, the rest of the neighborhood would fall in line. Cross-examination turned vicious immediately. Bradford attacked Baker's immigration status and a minor shoplifting charge from a decade earlier. Despite this, Baker maintained her composure, her testimony corroborating the timeline Elijah had established. The momentum seemed to be shifting. For the first time since the trial began, Reeves looked genuinely concerned, passing frequent notes to his attorneys. Police attendance in the gallery thinned noticeably as the testimony continued through a second day. Then everything changed again. During the lunch break, security cameras captured Officer Wilson approaching Baker in the courthouse bathroom. Though no audio was recorded, the body language was clear: intimidation. When Baker returned for afternoon testimony, she appeared visibly distraught, makeup hastily reapplied over tear tracks. Her testimony shifted dramatically. "I may have misunderstood the instructions I was given," she said, contradicting her morning statements. Andrews immediately objected, requesting a witness tampering investigation. Judge Harmon overruled without explanation. By the end of the day, Baker had recanted key elements of her testimony. "Officer Reeves never directly instructed me to do anything illegal," she concluded, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the courtroom. Court officers noted Officer Wilson escorting Baker from the building afterward. She disappeared that evening. Her apartment found empty the next morning. 3 days later, Maya spotted Baker working a security desk at the development company headquarters, a position that hadn't existed the week before. DA Andrews' frustration grew as her case unraveled through judicial rulings and witness intimidation. Key testimony continued to be disallowed on increasingly tenuous procedural grounds. Her junior prosecutor resigned in protest over what he termed a miscarriage of justice. Media coverage shifted, portraying the case as overreach by an ambitious DA. The prosecution witness list shrank as the intimidation campaign bore fruit. Former pharmacy employees suddenly remembering inventory discrepancies. Neighbors who initially supported David now uncertain about his character. Andrews finally approached Maya about a potential plea agreement. "We might not be able to get justice in this court," she admitted grimly. "But a plea keeps the door open for federal charges later." Maya adamantly refused. David deserves the truth to be heard, not a convenient compromise. With options dwindling, Andrews placed all her hopes on Elijah's testimony, a tremendous burden for a 10-year-old boy. She spent hours coaching him, knowing he represented their final chance for conviction. "Just tell the truth exactly as you remember it," she advised. "Don't let them confuse you or make you angry." The defense, sensing the threat Elijah's testimony posed, filed motions to exclude him based on competency concerns. Judge Harmon denied these motions, one of his few rulings favoring the prosecution, noting Elijah's academic record and the grand jury's prior acceptance of his testimony. Before Elijah could testify, however, Maya was called to the stand. She maintained composure through initial questioning about the timeline and events surrounding David's death. Then, defense attorney Bradford introduced body cam footage of the pharmacy aftermath without warning. The courtroom screen showed David's body, blood pooling around him on the white pharmacy floor. Maya gasped, gripping the witness stand so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Mrs. Johnson, isn't it true you immediately accused these officers without knowing what happened?" Bradford asked as the footage played on repeat. I knew my husband wasn't a drug dealer, Maya answered, her voice strained. Bradford forced her to watch the footage repeatedly, questioning her about obstruction of officers at the scene. Each viewing seemed to physically pain Maya, who struggled to maintain her composure. The final breakdown came when Bradford asked, "If you were so concerned about threats, why didn't you protect your husband better?" "They murdered him," Maya shouted through tears. "They hunted him for months and murdered him." Judge Harmon immediately ordered her testimony stricken, instructing the jury to disregard the emotional outburst. Maya was helped from the courtroom by her sister, passing Elijah, who watched with steely determination. In the bathroom, Maya sobbed uncontrollably as her sister tried to comfort her. "I've failed him," she whispered. "I've failed David." The door opened, and Elijah entered, ignoring his aunt's protest that this was the women's restroom. "It's okay, Mom," he said with remarkable calm. "I was there. I saw everything. I remember everything." He demonstrated remarkable recall of courtroom proceedings, identifying weaknesses in the defense strategy. "Dad always said the truth is like medicine. Sometimes it tastes bad, but it makes things better." Maya's concern was palpable. "They'll try to break you like they broke Ms. Baker." Elijah's response revealed surprising maturity. "They expect me to be scared. That's their weakness." He outlined his strategy. "I'll tell the truth so simply they can't twist it." From his pocket, he pulled the recording watch. "And I have something they don't know about." District Attorney Andrews arrived to find Elijah confidently preparing Maya for what was to come. The decision was made. Elijah would be their final witness. The next morning, the courtroom fell silent as Elijah took the stand. His small frame barely visible above the witness box, he placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, his voice clear and unwavering. Andrews established his background quickly: his age, his academic achievements, his relationship with his father. Then came the critical moment. "Elijah, is the person who shot your father in this courtroom today?" Time seemed to stretch as everyone held their breath. Elijah's arm rose slowly but steadily, with no hesitation in the movement. His finger extended directly at Officer Reeves. "He killed my daddy," Elijah stated clearly. But that's not all he did. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Judge Harmon called for order, his gavel cracking sharply against the sound block. As chaos erupted around him, Elijah's focus narrowed to Reeves's face, specifically his eyes. The courtroom sounds faded, as memories flooded back, not just of the shooting, but of everything that had led to this moment. When order was restored, Elijah's testimony continued, stunning the courtroom with its detail and precision. He methodically recounted each incident of harassment with perfect recall of dates, times, and participants. What had previously seemed like isolated events now connected into a clear pattern of corruption and intimidation. On April 12th at 3:17 p.m., Officer Reeves came to our pharmacy claiming to conduct a health inspection. He wore white gloves and ran his fingers along shelves looking for dust. When he couldn't find any violations, he said, "Would be a shame if something happened to this place." Elijah recounted the midnight meeting he had witnessed, describing the conversation between Reeves, Harrison, and Councilman Porter about clearing obstacles and making the pharmacy corner vacant by quarter's end. Defense objections grew increasingly desperate as Elijah remained unshakable in cross-examination. Bradford attempted to confuse him with misleading questions about timelines, but Elijah corrected her politely each time. "No, ma'am. That happened on June 3rd, not June 5th. It was raining that morning, and Officer Reeves was wearing his department raincoat with the tear on the left sleeve." The jury took extensive notes, fully engaged with his testimony in a way they hadn't been with other witnesses. Several jurors openly glared at Reeves when Elijah described the final confrontation in precise detail. "Dad was holding his phone when Officer Reeves shot him," Elijah stated firmly. "I could see the black phone case with the pharmacy logo clearly in his hand. Then Officer Reeves took a gun from his ankle holster and put it next to my dad's hand." While the other officers looked shocked, his voice never wavered, his eyes locked on Reeves throughout the testimony. Judge Harmon appeared increasingly uncomfortable, but could find no grounds to limit the testimony, despite Bradford's repeated attempts to interrupt. Then came the moment that changed everything. "Elijah, were you wearing anything special the day your father died?" Andrews asked. "Yes," Elijah replied. "My recording watch. Dad taught me to record anything important." Bradford erupted from her seat. "Objection. This wasn't in discovery," Andrews countered calmly. "The witness only revealed its existence yesterday, Your Honor. We immediately provided it to the defense as required." After a lengthy sidebar, Judge Harmon reluctantly allowed the recording, though his expression suggested he recognized the potential impact on the case. The courtroom speakers played crystal-clear audio of the pharmacy confrontation. David's voice came through distinctly. "I'm reaching for my phone to call my attorney." Gunshots followed, then the unmistakable sound of metal object being placed on the floor. Reeves's voice. "He went for a weapon. We all saw it. The timing made it impossible for David to have had a weapon before being shot." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom as the timeline contradicted the entire defense case. A technical expert confirmed the recording's authenticity, the timestamp matching exactly with 911 calls and dispatch records. Defense attorney Bradford frantically whispered to an increasingly pale-faced Reeves, while jury members exchanged significant glances. Bradford demanded the recording be ruled inadmissible, citing various technicalities including obtained by a minor without consent. A lengthy legal battle ensued over one-party consent laws and whether Elijah's minor status affected the recording's admissibility. Police union representatives in the gallery made urgent phone calls while courtroom doors were suddenly locked for security concerns. The defense requested a private conference with the prosecution and judge, clearly offering a surprise plea deal behind closed doors. Andrews returned looking resolute. "The people reject any compromise of justice," she announced firmly. Bradford's strategy shifted to attacking the recording's chain of custody and technical reliability. Expert witnesses contradicted each other about audio authenticity, creating confusion designed to plant doubt. To everyone's surprise, Judge Harmon allowed the recording. The jury should evaluate the reliability themselves. His expression suggested the case had grown beyond his ability to control the narrative. The defense's final desperate strategy claimed David had doctored the recording before his death to frame police. This theory backfired spectacularly as it acknowledged David anticipated being killed by officers, undermining their portrayal of the shooting as an unexpected response to a threat. Cross-examination of Elijah grew increasingly hostile as the defense position deteriorated. Bradford suggested he had fabricated testimony based on media coverage. "I don't watch the news," Elijah responded simply. "Mom says it gives me nightmares." He countered each accusation by reciting details not public knowledge, further rattling the defense. Reeves passed increasingly frantic notes to his attorneys, visibly agitated as questioning failed to undermine Elijah's account. Judge Harmon warned Reeves about his behavior after he punched the table during testimony. Defense questions became more aggressive until Andrews' objections were finally sustained. Then came the moment that broke Reeves' carefully constructed facade. Elijah turned to face him directly. "Why did you tell Officer Wilson to clear the pharmacy before coming in if it was a surprise inspection?" The question hung in the air, suggesting knowledge Elijah shouldn't possess unless he had indeed witnessed their planning. Reeves exploded. "Because your father was a problem that needed solving." The courtroom fell silent as Reeves continued his outburst. "You think you know everything? Your father signed his death warrant when he threatened us with that evidence." Bailiffs moved toward Reeves as he lunged in Elijah's direction. "You'll end up just like him if you don't shut your mouth." Judge Harmon immediately ordered jury removal. Reeves was physically restrained and removed from the courtroom. Maya rushed to Elijah, who remained composed despite the threat. "Dad was right about remembering," he whispered to her. The following morning, Officer Wilson approached District Attorney Andrews during recess. "I want to make a deal." Other officers from Reeves's unit suddenly requested meetings with prosecution. Internal Affairs launched a simultaneous investigation at police headquarters, seizing computers and files. Anonymous police sources began leaking additional documents to reporter Samantha Watson. Captain Miller agreed to testify about development. company payments to the department in exchange for reduced charges. The courthouse atmosphere shifted dramatically. Police presence in the gallery thinned to almost nothing as officers distanced themselves from Reeves. Judge Harmon recused himself, citing appearance of conflict after a media investigation revealed phone records showing calls between the judge, Bradford, and Police Chief Williams. Judge Renee Washington, known for strict ethical standards, took over the case. The police union attorney replaced Bradford as defense counsel when her firm withdrew, citing irreconcilable differences with their client. Phone records revealed coordination between the judge, defense team, and police chief throughout the initial proceedings. District Attorney Andrews added conspiracy and racketeering charges as new evidence flooded in from officers seeking leniency. Maya overheard officers in the hallway. "Reeves went too far. We didn't sign up for murder." A grand jury convened to hear expanded evidence beyond the Reeves case. Federal prosecutors joined the investigation, bringing resources and jurisdiction that local authorities couldn't match. Police Chief Williams was indicted on corruption, evidence tampering, and conspiracy charges. 3 city council members were arrested for accepting bribes from the development company. Mayor Wilson announced his resignation, citing health concerns hours before his own indictment. Development company executives Thomas Harrison and James Porter faced racketeering charges. An internal police investigation revealed 17 officers involved in systematic harassment campaigns targeting businesses that opposed development. Evidence connected similar operations in 3 neighboring counties. The state attorney general announced a complete department review and oversight program. Jennifer Baker was located and placed in witness protection, providing comprehensive testimony about her role in the conspiracy. Investigators discovered target lists on the police department server identifying 38 businesses slated for enforcement action. David Johnson's name topped the list with the notation, "Priority removal, evidence collection." As the legal system finally began addressing the corruption, the community rallied around the Johnson family. The church parking lot rallies grew into street-filling demonstrations, supporting justice for David. Pharmacy customers shared stories of David's generosity, how he provided medications for those who couldn't afford them, delivered prescriptions to homebound seniors, and offered payment plans to families in need. Neighbors finally spoke publicly about witnessing the harassment campaign, no longer fearing reprisal with federal oversight in place. Local businesses displayed "Justice for David" signs, the atmosphere of fear lifting as indictments mounted. A community fundraiser established a scholarship fund in David's name for students pursuing careers in pharmacy or public service. Maya's clients returned to thank her, sharing additional evidence of police intimidation that strengthened the federal case. The developers' plans were halted by city review, replaced by a community development committee that included neighborhood representatives. Mrs. Turner organized truth walks through the neighborhood, educating residents about gentrification-resistant strategies. A memorial garden was planted, where David was killed, with community members maintaining it daily. The Johnson Pharmacy building was purchased by a community land trust, with plans for a cooperative health center serving the neighborhood. Elijah became a neighborhood symbol of courage. Younger children looked up to him, and his classmates, once kept away by fearful parents, now sought his friendship. Maya received hundreds of letters from similar communities nationwide, sharing their stories of police-enforced displacement. 6 months after Elijah's testimony, Maya was invited to the Department of Justice to consult on a new police accountability initiative. Her congressional testimony about systematic use of police power for development interests sparked a national conversation about gentrification tactics. Her law practice expanded to focus specifically on cases connecting housing discrimination and police misconduct. Prestigious law journals published her analysis of enforcement-driven gentrification, establishing a new framework for understanding urban displacement. Major civil rights organizations created a coalition based on Maya's research, providing legal resources to communities facing similar pressures. Law schools requested her lectures on community defense strategies against coordinated displacement efforts. The settlement from the city established precedent for similar cases nationwide. Maya established a legal clinic in the neighborhood, training a new generation of civil rights attorneys. The developer's frozen assets were redirected to a community development fund under her oversight. Maya's pregnancy progressed healthily despite the stress of the trial. An ultrasound revealed twins, a boy and girl she named David Jr. and Justice. In quiet moments in David's study, she often spoke to him about the changes his sacrifice had sparked. "Your death made a difference," she whispered one night, touching his photograph. "The system is changing because you stood firm." When sentencing day finally arrived, the courtroom was packed. Community members lined up hours before doors opened. Impact statements from neighbors and pharmacy customers described David's importance to the neighborhood. Maya's statement focused not on vengeance but systemic change. "My husband believed in justice even when the system failed him. Today we see that justice delayed is not always justice denied." Elijah declined to speak during sentencing, instead placing his father's pharmacy pin on the evidence table, a silent reminder of what had been lost. Judge Washington acknowledged the broader implications beyond the individual case. "This court has witnessed not just a murder, but the attempted murder of justice itself through corruption of the very systems designed to protect citizens." Reeves was given the maximum sentence, 30 years without parole, plus consecutive terms for corruption charges. Additional sentences for conspirators ranged from 10 to 25 years, depending on their level of involvement and cooperation. As officers led Reeves away, he made one final threat to Elijah. "This isn't over, boy." The comment, captured by courtroom microphones, added years to his sentence for witness intimidation. Media coverage highlighted the case as a potential turning point in police accountability. Samantha Watson's investigative series won national awards and prompted reviews of similar cases nationwide. 1 year later, a ribbon-cutting ceremony marked the opening of the David Johnson Community Justice Center in the renovated pharmacy building. The facility housed a legal clinic, community pharmacy run as a nonprofit, and advocacy training center. Maya stood proudly with 1-year-old David Jr. in her arms, Justice toddling beside her holding Elijah's hand. Now 11, Elijah had grown taller and more confident, though his eyes still held a seriousness beyond his years. "My father believed that remembering is the first step toward justice," Elijah told the gathered crowd. "But remembering without action changes nothing. This center represents both memory and action combined." National news covered the center's opening, highlighting successful reforms following the case. The police department operated under new leadership with a community oversight board wielding actual authority. The development project had been reimagined with affordable housing requirements and local business preservation at its core. Maya had resumed her law practice, now specializing in police accountability cases nationwide. Elijah started middle school with top grades despite his traumatic year, founding a student social justice club despite being the youngest member. His bedroom walls, once covered with evidence diagrams, now displayed news clippings of similar cases across the country. He had begun connecting these incidents into patterns, showing the same analytical skills that had helped bring down Reeves. On the anniversary of the verdict, Elijah visited his father's grave alone. The simple headstone read, "David Johnson, beloved husband, father, healer, truth-teller." Elijah placed the pharmacy pin, the mortar and pestle that had been a Johnson family symbol for 2 generations, on the headstone. "We remembered everything, Dad. Just like you asked," he said softly, "and we changed things." The memorial garden surrounding the grave bloomed with flowers planted by neighbors, the pharmacy building visible in the distance with its new purpose. As Elijah turned to leave, dozens of community members approached with flowers and stories about his father. Mrs. Turner wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Your daddy would be so proud of you, child." Elijah took his mother's hand as they walked away together, his father's watch still on his wrist, the one that had captured the truth when everyone tried to bury it. "It's still recording, Dad," he whispered as they reached the car. "Always will be." He didn't mean just the watch, but his own perfect memory, the gift that had once been just a family curiosity, but had become the key to justice. The neighborhood around them was changing, but unlike the developer's vision, it was changing on its own terms, with its history, and people intact. The pointed truth of a child had accomplished what money and power had tried to prevent. Justice, delayed but not denied, and a community that refused to be erased. What would you risk to speak truth against power? Who would you become to honor those silenced by corruption? Elijah's story reminds us that justice begins with a single voice brave enough to remember. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more powerful narratives that challenge us to stand against injustice. Your support helps these stories reach those who need to hear them most.